Hello and welcome to the show. This is the Cult of Conspiracy. My name's Jonathan.
Jacob.
Today we have a super fascinating topic along with the fascinating guest that is attached to said topic. Welcome to the show, Paul Stobbs.
Hi guys, thanks for having me.
Hey dude,
Absolutely, man.
we've had a lot of cult members reach out to us, say, "My God, have you heard of Nephilim clowns? You need to get with Paul." I actually at the time hadn't heard of it before, and Jacob is as new to this as me. But I mean, it seems like you definitely know what you're talking about. You give a lot of reference points, and the name of your show is Understanding Conspiracy, right?
It is,
So I
yes.
mean,
It's a YouTube channel I started in 2014. I was originally just a scattershot conspiracy theorist talking about anything and everything, just wanted to question the world and network and get to know other people who were in the business, to call it anything, in the game of conspiracy.
Yeah.
And then as time went on, as we were discussing earlier, I got into the biblical perspective. I found the truth in all of that. I started to deep dive into the biblical history, antediluvian age, the flood, the Nephilim, all that kind of thing, and I've inadvertently found myself becoming somewhat of an expert on clowns. And I discovered something which my body of work predominantly is about now. I've been, like I said, I've been doing this for about 10 years almost. But I started in 2016 creating a series dedicated to the way the Nephilim looked. And it turns out they look like clowns. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Okay.
wow. So I mean, I'm not super well versed in all the Christian stuff, but Nephilim, they're said to be the basically the Anunnaki's kids, right?
It depends on what perspective you look at it from. Every culture has their own way of describing them. Many cultures like the Anunnaki, for example, and the Sumerians, they would consider them the creators of humanity. But I do believe the Anunnaki creation myth is actually talking about the creation from the fallen angels of the Nephilim, not humans. I think it's a bit of a misinterpretation there. But yeah, basically, ancient giants, which were hybridized creatures that were half heavenly, half human. Many cultures have stories telling that tale of things coming from heaven and mixing with humanity. The biblical narrative is that of the Watchers, the fallen angels. Well, I think it's a distinction that has to be made. First of all, actually, the Watchers weren't necessarily fallen angels originally. They were just angels that were given the task by God to look over His creation, which was mankind, and they failed miserably at their job, basically, and were tempted, likely by fallen angels, during Lucifer's rebellion, to mix themselves with human women. And they did. They took wives, it says in the Book of Enoch, and they created offspring, hybrid offspring, which were half divine, half human, and they became giants. They were
So let me
originally.
ask you this.
So go ahead.
I've
Go
heard,
ahead.
I've heard people mention that there's a thought to say that dinosaurs and these other types of historic animals would be the offspring, because the argument is that the fallen angels came and they just didn't want to procreate with human women. They wanted to corrupt all of God's creation, the
Yeah.
earth, animal, the fowl, the sea, everything. So there's an argument to say that the dinosaurs that they're referring to, i.e., the dragons of the book of Genesis, are another form of these Nephilimic offspring. What are your thoughts on this, sir?
Yeah. Well, there's many stages in the history of corrupting God's creation, in which different creatures began to appear in each time section. The original issue was so the first step in corrupting God's creation, let's say, actually goes back to Cain, realistically. So Cain murdered his brother and was cast out into the wilderness, basically, and it said he went to the land of Nod and built a city called Enoch, named after his first son, because he took a wife from somewhere. And it seems like he took a wife from the peoples of the land of Nod, so it implies there were other people around as well, and that gets into a whole other can of worms, But we don't have to discuss that today. But it basically, it seems like Cain had this hatred in him, and he himself went on to corrupt mankind first by creating cities and then introducing weights and measures to the minds of people, which is division of land, the ownership of property. So that was the first step in corrupting mankind and making them greedy, basically introducing greed and pride to them. And it seems like an enemy of my enemy is my friend situation happened, because I think the fallen angels were also pretty pissed off with God for choosing humanity to rule over the earth rather than them, basically teamed up with Cain and said, let's work together on this and mess up God's creation even more. And I do believe it was the daughters of Cain's lineage that mated with the fallen angels to create the offspring, which were the Nephilim. And the angels
Uh,
knew, the
wow.
angels,
So he
yeah,
literally sacrificed his own daughters physically, the
oh
daughters
yeah,
of Cain,
it was
to evil purpose.
it was brutal. I mean, if you read in, like, for example, I think the Book of Lamech of Cain, or even the Book of King Og, these extra biblical texts that discuss the process of birthing a Nephilim, it's literally like a scene out of Alien. They burst out of the stomach and tear the woman apart in the process. They die. There's no surviving that process. You know what I mean? And so this
Yeah.
is what I mean. But that alone, bear that all in mind, because the story gets really trippy when you start going on. Because they found solutions to these problems, like women dying at birth, giving birth to Nephilim. They got really efficient at creating more and more monsters as time went on. Because see that they were the OG Nephilim, the original ones, the original Watchers, mated with human women and created these half angel, half human hybrids. And they were huge. They just kept growing. They were originally described as the heroes of old. So I think these ancient cultures first looked up to them as something incredible, doing amazing feats, things that humans just weren't capable of because of the sheer strength they had. And also, they were part divine, so they probably had some kind of magical, weird stuff going on as well. Weird auras around them, the ability to shift reality in ways that we just can't do. But then they very quickly turned on humanity, and eventually, it says in the Book of Jasher, humanity just couldn't sustain them anymore. They were just eating too much. They just couldn't physically create enough food to keep them satisfied. They were too large,
Right.
and there was too many. So eventually, these Nephilim creatures basically subjugated all of humanity and also began to eat them. They became our predators in that respect. And I think that was the plan all along. I think the fallen angels knew this was going to happen. And around the same time, a lot of religions were created around this time, which were like serpent worship cults to venerate the fallen angels, to take attention away from God. So a lot of these sun worship cults came around, snake worship cults, nature worship cults, all this pagan view, anything but God, basically. The pantheistic religions started to appear around this time as well. The many gods rather than the one true God started to appear. And what you had was the heavenly hosts of rebellious angels in the heavens, which were worshipped as gods. And on the earth, you had their offspring, who were the kings and rulers, doing the physical stuff, keeping the people in line in the physical sense. So there's a hierarchy to the rulership of this really messed up, terrible time to be alive, antediluvian age. It was just not good for humans. It got progressively worse and worse and worse with each passing generation,
You
because
said the Diluvian age, meaning the pre-flood
just
era.
just before the flood, yeah.
Okay.
So it was by the sixth generation from Seth in the days of Jared is when the angels mated with human women. So for a good 6 generations, and these people lived for a long time, by the way, like 900 years. So these generations are
Right.
long. It was mainly humanity corrupting themselves through Cain before this deal was made. But then it only took about 4 generations for everything to just utterly get destroyed and humanity to just be an absolute mess. So a lot of these humans worship them as gods. They worship the pantheons of fallen angels as gods, and they worship the Nephilim right in front of them as gods as well. Sacrifice to them. It just became an absolute shit show of just a mess. It was awful. If you just read some of these accounts of what was going on, it was brutal. It's just not a place you want to be.
And this is also backed by the Sumerian scroll, if I'm not mistaken, or I think it's called the Sumerian roll. It's this massive stone tablet, quote unquote, but it's more like a cylinder. And on each side, I want to say there's like 10 sides to it. They have a written account of all the Sumerian kings. One of these said that they ruled for like 32,000 years. So it would have been around this time frame that this was talking.
Oh yeah. This is a long time. The antediluvian age. The mind boggles to think just how long it's roughly probably went on for maybe about, like I said, 4,000 years, something like that, 5,000. We don't really know. The timescales are wild. We can
Right.
infer from the how long it says each lineage from Adam survived, because it says their age, and it's a long time. Okay, it's a good few thousand years this was going on, but it happened quickly in terms of corruption, and it was very quickly established that these hybridized creatures were the kings very, very quickly. They took over everything, and they were basically worshipped as gods among men. And God saw this and he wasn't very happy. He was like, "This is not the plan I had at all in mind for humanity. This is pretty terrible. This is awful. I'm going to have to destroy the infrastructure they've built in place. Because don't forget, these are giants, so building megalithic structures to them is like playing with Lego. It's not a big deal, okay? And that's probably where we get most of these things from, these remnants of this ancient past, where these huge ziggurats were created to honor these gods and themselves, you know, and humanity was basically just a subservient slave class. So you'll find a lot of these,
Is it possible that is there any correlation to these giants and the pyramids?
Probably. Yeah, I mean,
Well, I know there's like Megalithic structures and stuff like that. I just didn't know if that was, drawing just.
Who knows? I've watched all the documentaries
say,
everybody else has about the pyramids. Who knows? But
I will say that you could look at the hieroglyphs. You'll see one dude that's like 10 times taller than all the little ones next to him. Now that could mean, because he was the pharaoh of da da da, or could that have literally been his size? And that was like a 1-to-1 ratio. Who's to say?
Could have been.
Yeah.
So I have another question. This is going to probably sound a little ignorant, so I'm sorry.
No, go.
But as far as fallen angels are concerned, is there...
You know what, Jonathan? I do want to say he's bringing up a lot of biblical information, boom, 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 that I'm like with him on. I'm sure there's a lot of these names he's throwing out that you don't know. Feel free to like jut in and ask those too. Because I mean, for a lot of our cult members, they may not know like the lineage of Seth and like that conversation. You know what I mean?
Sure. Thank you for the permission, sir.
Oh, shut up. I was just saying, like, I want you to please jump out because some of those questions I feel like need to be asked.
Sure. So as far as fallen angels are concerned, is it possible, and I'm just getting weird here, were these angels kicked out of heaven, or did they leave on their own? Is it possible that they wanted to leave, or were they absolutely kicked out and God is the one that gave them the boot?
A little bit of this, a little bit of that, to be honest. You have to understand, so the fallen angels they're just angels. We can call them fallen angels. They're still angels, whether they're fallen or no, okay? They still have that power, And the ones that particularly rebelled against God and did this horrible thing were the Seraphim angels, I believe. So there's a hierarchy to the angelic order, and just below, basically of the highest order, you have the Seraphim. They're the ones that are right next to God's throne. It says they sing holy, holy, holy for eternity right around God's throne. They're the closest confidants God had in terms of his sons that he created, this angelic class of being. I do believe they're the ones he entrusted to watch over his creation. So for a long time, these seraphim angels were the gods among his creation. Okay, and this is not churchianity I'm about to say here. This is a controversial take, but I side with Gary Wayne on this, that there were humans created before Adam and Eve, and they're called the Day 6 people. It says in Genesis. Yeah, it says in Genesis.
Wait, that's controversial?
It's very controversial if you're of a churchianity mind.
Cain went and married the people of the land of Nod. Who do they think those were?
Well, I'm a conspiracy theorist. So I'm going to talk about this either way. I don't care. But at the end of the day, it says in Genesis, he created man and woman, plural, together at once, and said to them, multiply, subdue the earth, go forth and multiply. And then the next verse it says, God created Adam and put him in a garden alone.
Yeah.
Two different stories right next to each other, And
if you follow the lineage of Adam, that's where we get to the lineage of Noah. And if you follow the lineage of Noah, that's what restarts the entire earth. So yes, is it crazy to conceive that God, who created all of this extra special, is it possible that he took a little extra special care for this one person because they knew that this lineage was going to lead to, the birth of his actual son one day? Throwing it out?
Something like that. Yeah, that's basically it. That's what the Bible is, a book of lineages for this specific reason. It's trying to show you exactly where the lineage of the Messiah came from, all the way back to the beginning of Adam.
Meticulous note takers, man. Yeah. They're very good about taking notes and records.
Exactly.
Sure.
So that's why it really glosses over the antediluvian past in Genesis, because it's written in a way that assumes the reader already knows all that stuff. Enoch's well understood type of stuff, and we don't have to go into the antediluvian past in the Bible because we're here to talk about the journey of the lineages. That's basically it. But there are plenty of books surrounding the Bible which are called extra canonical texts, pseudepigraphical texts. They're a very complicated word there, but they go into all these extra stories surrounding this ancient time, like the Book of Enoch, for example, or Jasher, or Jubilees, or there's arguments about many of them. People say they're not canon, but if they're not canon, they're still very good history. So it's definitely worth looking into to get good context for the type of things that were happening in the past. So a lot of these things I'm saying come from these contextual extra books, but I do believe they fit into the narrative completely and wholly. So yeah. So again, we're talking about this rebellion that happened. So I think the angels saw God pick Adam, a human, creatures they have been watching over and has been seen by as gods for a long time. Suddenly God chooses one of these inferior monkey-like mammals and starts teaching him to name all the animals and starts grooming him to be the ruler over the earth. I think a lot of these angels took that as an insult. They thought, why hasn't he chosen one of us to rule over the earth? Why did he not? We are far greater than humans. Why are we not been chosen? We've been here since the start. It's jealousy and pride, And I think
Especially,
This sounds a lot like the Enki and Enlil conversation.
yeah,
well,
Have you been to Enki and Enlil?
yeah, but these
So
stories, you have to understand these Enki and Enlil stories, I do believe are bastardized versions of what actually happened. Because
okay.
there was a lot of fallen angels about messing with humanity's history at that time, writing false narratives to paint them in a positive light to maintain these religions, especially just after the flood as well, along with the Tower of Babel that Nimrod was building, establishing the same order that came prior to the flood to re-establish these fallen angels back into positions of power and to reintroduce the Nephilim as well. It was a really messed up time. So I think a lot of these stories line up with the Bible so perfectly because it is the same story, just written from either a pro or negative perspective based on
let
the
me ask
culture of the
you this.
peoples.
Talking about the flood and the Nephilim that sprung up after the flood, tell me what your opinion is based off of your understanding and your knowledge. If the flood did in fact kill all of the Nephilim that at least walked the earth, we have no idea what kind of Nephilim may or may not be in the sea. We don't even know it's in 90% of the shit.
We're underground.
Or underground. We have no idea. Or in the sky. Pterodactyls and look, we don't know. We don't know. All I am saying, and I don't mean I'm poking fun to be a bit of comic relief, yes, but I'm not poking fun at my faith either. I'm just saying if we can't laugh at it, then what's the point? That
Okay.
being said, where do you believe the Nephilim resprung up from? Because I have heard multiple theories about where this could have come from. Did the fallen angels just repropagate with human women again? Were there some that built their own boats, or they got to high enough ground to evade this? Were there some that tore a hole in the fabric of time and space and kind of hung out for a little bit till the waters receded, then reappeared a couple decades later? I've heard a lot. Where are you at on it?
It's all of them. I've gone into all
Okay.
these theories that you've talked about myself. I've even found examples in histories of cultures that have nothing to so far removed from the Middle East that it begs the question that clearly Nephilim did survive the flood in many, many, many ways. First of all, the Ziusudra story from the Epic of Gilgamesh, for example, or the Upnapishtim example from the Akkadian version of the same story. It's talking about a Nephilim who survived by making a boat similar to Noah, but it's not Noah because this person Ziusudra is documented as an antediluvian king. In fact, he was the 10th king of Larsa before the flood and the last king. And I think Enki came to him. Was it Enlil? No, it was Enki came to him and said, "You need to build a boat." God's pissed. He's about to flood the whole earth, basically. Sort it out, and he did. He built like a cube-shaped boat, and he brought his wife on there. Then after the floods receded, I believe Enki came to him, or Enlil came to him, and gave him immortality. That's not the story of Noah. That's a different creature. That's a different beast altogether. He was a documented king prior to the flood. Noah wasn't a king. If he was a king, he would have been a Nephilim hybrid creature, a descendant of the Nephilim,
Okay.
because all kings and rulers just before the flood had been established to be the Nephilim by that point. So we know for a fact Nephilim do survive in many ways. Another story, for example, is just before the flood, there was a
You
lot of
know,
humans hybridizing themselves. It's described in the book of Jasher that there was the mixing of kinds happening, different species being blended with one another. This came after God's original punishment for the angels who created the Nephilim. What he did was make the angels watch his own children, the giants, murder each other. Once all the big giants had died, the humans decided, okay, well, we'll just hybridize ourselves to be like Nephilim. So they had a lot of these humans creating genetic engineering of some kind to become hybrid, half animal, half human chimera monsters. Mermaids, centaurs, sirens, things like that, you know what I mean? Tauruses, or whatever you want to say. There's many versions of fish people, bird people, werewolves, dogmen, you name it, Mothman,
Right.
whatever. All these cryptids, all these examples, lizard people. These are humans who have corrupted their DNA in this mixing of kinds period, and that came with also melding animals together, creating lions with the tails of snakes and all these type of things, or like griffins, for example, with the claws of the head of an eagle with the claws of a lion, or whatever you want to say. That's when that happened, just before the flood. That's when all flesh became corrupted, all flesh. And then God preserved his creation on a boat with Noah, the last human who hadn't corrupted his DNA in any way. Who's to say what about his family? They must have had some corruption, maybe, if Noah was the only one perfect in his generations, But
So basically, before the flood, it was fucking Narnia.
It was crazy. Yeah.
Essentially, yes. But I love that you're saying that. All right. I feel like a lot of people don't understand what the world looked like pre-flood. I think a lot of people, just based off of like images we've seen from cartoons growing up or something, that like mankind was still in like the village stage. We hadn't figured out cities and kingdoms and deities and whole systems and education and technology and sciences. Like, I feel like people really don't understand where humanity was pre-flood, because we don't know, because a lot of this has been lost information. A lot of this is suppressed information with the remnants that we do find in our day and age today. But like, you understand that when the flood happened, all of those king dynastic rulers, the lineage of of the floopty flaws of some land you've never even heard of, this centuries and centuries of these generations that have been warring over one reason or another, completely wiped off the face of the earth, reset to this one dude in a boat with these animals, period. That is a wild concept, man.
However, some did survive other than Noah. So it does say in the Bible everything on the land was destroyed. There's plenty of hybridized humans around at this time who had mixed themselves with aquatic creatures who can survive a flood no problem. And also humans who would mix themselves with avian creatures who can fly, who can recede above a flood and float on the water no problem. A lot of these stories, see, flood myths are all over the earth. I'm writing about them in my book. I've gone through every continent on the earth, and there's thousands of flood myths. Okay, some of them are similar to the Noah story. Some of them just completely out there and wild. But many people's, I say people, remember, all flesh was corrupted. So I believe many of these survival myths are of Nephilim or hybridized humans. Okay, if Noah was the only one, then all of these other survival myths are of not humans surviving. They're like a human who's done something to themselves to be more hardy. Because you listen to some of these stories and they survive the flood in such wild ways. It's like they're not. A normal human would have died under their circumstances. They go for months without food or water, for example, by surviving in a hollowed out tree trunk. Or they shrink themselves down to fit in a tiny gourd and float out. Really obscure, or they climb to the top of an incredibly high mountain and just barely, by the skin of their teeth, hang on to that tip until the water recedes after a long time and they manage to survive. These aren't humans that are doing this. These must have something that's give them an edge to be able to just barely make it. There's a story in Ecuador of the Canary peoples, for example, and their myth is of a flood came. Two brothers survived by climbing to the top of the local mountain in Ecuador, and when the waters receded, they went down and they found a cave in the side of the mountain, and there was food left there for them. So they kept going back to this cave, and then eventually they discovered it's these two hybrid bird women who are going there and leaving food for them. I don't know why balloons just came up on there, but yeah, these
clowns, man. Because
I see. Yeah. So anyway, these two hybrid bird women turn up, and these two men rape them, and then repopulate the entire area with these two hybrid women. So the Ecuadorian people in this particular area, they still believe that they are the descendants of these flood survivors who mated with these hybrid bird women. So
like
you
the
know.
conquistadors and shit of the
well, no, those are Spanish descent. He's talking about like the natives of the tribes of that area. Like,
I think I'm thinking of like you remember that one what was it on? It was some Disney Channel original shit that back in the 90s where there was like Conquistador Man, and he was like some chubby old man who used to be the conquistador. I don't know. He's like part bird, part man. I don't know. I'm getting
they reference it in media all the time. It wouldn't surprise me because the macaw bird.
Wait, no, you mean steel condor?
The steel condor. Yes, that's
that's something else. That's your boy George Jefferson with a cape on. That was a Disney classic. Up and away, dude.
But he was like a superhero
Yeah.
in his time, is what I'm saying. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Well, this is the thing, though. A lot of these stories I'm talking about of hybrid humans, these are X-Men. They used to be men. They are now mutants. They are the superheroes of that day. They were the heroes of renown, the men of old, the heroes of old. You know, a lot of them were seen as heroes, men with superpowers. You know, and this is the thing. If you want to survive during this horrible, brutal period of time where there are giants roaming around eating people, you need to do something to your genetics to give yourself an edge in order to be able to survive during this time. So it's hardly surprising humanity took that step, took that deal with the fallen angels to corrupt their own DNA and mix themselves with animals in some way. If you can give yourself the armor of a beetle, an exoskeleton of a beetle, so you can't have your bones broken, you're going to take that option, for example. If you can mix yourself with the wings of a bird so you can fly above the enemy trying to kill you, then you're going to take that option. You know what I mean? It's hardly surprising humanity did that, but at the same time, it was a spit in the face of God's original design and creation as well. So it's kind of, it was nothing but death and destruction. Everyone was just killing each other out for themselves, basically. But
So, I mean, are these people who are converting themselves into these hybrid beings? Are their souls then becoming corrupted whenever they're mixing with other
I think
hybrid?
I think so. So first of all, let's explain where demons come from. So this is the origin of demons in its purest form, biblically speaking. There's this huge misconception that demons are angels or fallen angels. Not biblical, not canon. That is not at all in the book. That's never said once. That's just something we've kind of assumed because people don't understand Enoch or don't understand the Nephilim narrative or don't want to accept that it exists, to be honest. Demons are specifically the disembodied spirits of, first of all, the Nephilim, who were created by humans mixing with angels. So they became disembodied spirits stuck on Earth when they died. So they haven't left the Earth, they're just not embodied anymore. So they're kind of stuck here with us. They're still here. We call them demons. I do think the humans who corrupted themselves also paid that same price. I do think they became demons as well. And
So
they're also
it is
still
of your
here.
opinion that there are no physical demons, that these are all of the ethereal realm, so to say?
No. I think the cryptid phenomena we people experience in the modern day, where they do have these physical encounters, are remnants left over, survivors who made it past the flood, and they're just still kind of
Oh,
around in small numbers today. That's where we get them from. They used to be humans. Some
so
of them.
they exist in the physical realm and the ethereal realm.
Yeah, I mean, Bigfoot, for example, you always get this sense that they are kind of half physical, half mystical. They can teleport through trees and do weird stuff and make weird things happen mentally to people when they're around. You have to understand the Nephilim also had children. They mated with women and created like a half-quarter breed Nephilim human. And then they also had children, and they're described as the Eliud and the Elio in the Bible. And the Nephil. There's like 3 different versions, and they get smaller and smaller with each iteration. They're not as big as the original ones, the first true hybrids. There's less angel blood in them, and I think that's when you start getting weird features like hairy, elongated skull people at lower levels, you know. But the original OG Nephilim, they were like as tall as mountains, and they were like ridiculously terrifying looking clown, psychedelic, freaky monsters. They were insane, you know. And I think that got
Real quick,
diluted with each generation.
talking,
Yeah.
talking about Bigfoot, do y'all have a Bigfoot or a similar Bigfoot-esque story or cryptid from England?
All throughout Europe, we have something called the Wild Man. Yeah, it's a
Wild man.
it's a big part of my research. Actually, it's our version of the Nephilim or ancestor spirit worship cultures, and we have what's called the Wild Man tradition. And
Oh,
it's a huge, giant, hairy beast with a huge club over his shoulder. Every country in Europe has one, their own version of it. Yeah.
Oh,
I love it. I love it. Okay, so this is always seen as a threatening thing or like an elusive creature that really doesn't want to deal with humans. It's just off in the woods.
Oh, it's an immediate threat that was brutalizing people. Yeah,
Okay, so
that's the
very
point.
different from the American Sasquatch as far as that regard goes, because they've always been seen as like a peaceful creature that wants to be left alone, but will only attack you if provoked.
Well,
So,
there's different
and they'll send their
versions. You
men
know,
after you.
I think there's
oh no,
different
no, there's
versions.
different versions. That'd be like saying that one bear is more or less than the other. Like a black bear behaves very differently than a grizzly bear.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
completely different than a polar bear. So,
Yeah.
like, no, absolutely see the differences
Personality traits
abounding.
Mm.
and whatnot. Yeah.
Sure. Or
Yeah,
genus types, if you will, genus traits.
exactly. I mean, if you go to the Americas, there's stories of, for example, the Paiute Indians dealing with the Sitikar, who were these cannibalistic, pale-skinned, red-haired giants who lived in a cave, in Lovelock Cave. and they kept eating their tribe members. So the Pious took it upon themselves to war with this giant tribe that was just chilling just down the forest, you know, the other side of the forest, and they basically trapped them in the cave and then set fire to the entrance and killed them that way, you know. And there's evidence to say that the remains were discovered in the 1800s, and the tales match the evidence they found. Obviously, these giant skeletons all disappeared around the 1800s that were being uncovered everywhere by the Smithsonian, who just came in and took them away, and they were never seen again, you know. But we have all these newspaper clippings from the 1800s from all over America talking about giant skeletons being uncovered and dug up from all these mounds all over the place, you know, and in these strange places. This is a phenomena mankind has contended with even up to the modern day. The Nephilim corruption did make it past the flood. They were called the Rephaim after the flood. They had a different name. Now, the Rephaim is a strange name. First of all, Nephilim means tyrannical giant. That's literally what it translates to. It's from two root words in Hebrew, Nephil and Nephal. So Nephal means to fall, and Nephil means tyrannical giants. So these are the tyrannical giants of the fallen. That's literally what Nephilim stands for. People have tried to argue the etymology to mean many things that don't mean giant, but it does mean that. There's no other way around it. It's quite straightforward and simple. People want to say, oh, Nephilim means to fall, so Nephilim must be fallen angels. No. Gross misinterpretation. They are not fallen angels. Demons are not fallen angels. That has to get in people's minds. If you believe that, your basis is completely wrong and you are grossly misinterpreting everything from then on. They are the offspring of fallen angels and humans, okay? And possibly people who corrupted themselves. So after the flood, it seems like these giants just reappeared again, like the big ones. Now, if they are disembodied spirits, they're just looking for a body to repossess and get back into the physical realm. That's what possession is all about. They want to live through your body. They want a body again. They used to be seen as kings and rulers, don't forget. They were worshipped as gods, and now they're in this pathetic, weird realm with no body and no one can see them, and they have all these desires and hungers of the flesh with no senses to satisfy them. It's described by Jesus that when a demon's cast out of a man, he wanders in dry places. This idea that you thirst and cannot quench it. It's hell for these beings. They hate it there. So they'll do anything they can to get back. And it seems like something happened after the flood that gave them the ability to come back. Possibly hybrid bodies were created for them to re-inhabit in some way. Or, like I said, a lot of these flood myth survival stories of some of them did just make it through, you know, and Numbers talks about, you know, the giants in these lands were as tall as cedar trees and were like grasshoppers in the sights of them. So these were the big ones, you know, they did make it, but they were called the Rephaim. Rephaim means to heal, or the healed ones, or the dead ones, or the healed dead, the undead. So these were resurrected entities from the prior to the past. Some weird stuff was going on. I think Nimrod played a huge part in this. It seems like it says he became a Gibborim. Now, Nimrod was the son through Cush, from Ham's lineage through Cush. So he was from Noah. He was a human originally, but he became a Gibborim. He became a mighty man. Gibborim's the same thing described to describe the Nephilim, you know. So not all Gibborim are Nephilim, but all Nephilim were always described as Gibborim. It's one of those type
But
of
I thought
things.
that was more like he was possessed. I thought that was more or less that he was physically being possessed by a demon. And to that point,
Perhaps.
I also wanted to ask you, if angels, the fallen angels, are not demons themselves, then where are the fallen angels now? If the demons that you're talking about are only people who have died and did not go to heaven, they don't go to hell. This is their hell. They're now a demon. Where are the fallen angels?
Okay,
doing?
so the ones that mated with human women, they were bound in chains in Hades, in Tartarus. They're underground. They're waiting to be released in the last days. This is in Revelations. This is when Abaddon is released from the pit. And along with that, his army of hybrid creatures, which are human scorpion hybrids who have the ability to sting men and not kill them for so many days. And, you know, that's when they get released in the end days. But they, depending, there's arguments today of where you are on the timeline, and if you want to be a preterist, it's already happened. If not, then we're still waiting for that to happen. Who knows? But they were put in chains, you know, and a lot of the other angels saw the punishment and were like, whoa, we're not going to do that again. We're not going to mate with human women again. So this implies, you know, after the flood, they didn't have sex with human women again and create Nephilim that way. They got through some other way, you know. And I think what they did is they convinced humans to corrupt themselves. and that's
Okay.
how they legalistically got around doing such a thing. Okay, this is the thing about the devil. You know, he's a con man. He gets you to do it to yourself. He doesn't actually break the laws. Do you get what I mean? He's
Right.
convincing you that it's a good idea to break the laws instead. And I think a lot of these angels are still around. No, it says specifically, you know, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against spiritual wickedness in high places. They're still here. These fallen angels, this rebellion never ended. We're still in the midst of the rebellion. We're still in the throes of it all. But Jesus came and defeated them. That's the point.
Okay.
That's Jesus' story. He came to put an end to the war and give us a way out. Because up until that point, we were just fodder, and the demons had free reign to just possess us, and we had no way to cast them out effectively. But Jesus has given us all this ability. They're a defeated enemy now. That's the whole.
The
Yeah.
the angels are now under the control of Satan. Then is that what you're saying?
The fallen angels. So.
Yeah, the
Well,
fallen angels.
You can argue about who Satan is. The people say there's many Satans. There's a spiritual hierarchy to the angels, and there is definitely a leader. People say it's Azazel or Samyaza who was the leader of the Watchers, but some people argue that it's Lucifer. But then who is Lucifer? Some people say Lucifer is actually a Nephilim who was the son of Satan. It gets wild when you actually try to speculate who that character is, but Satan's more of a name. It's more like a title. It means the adversary. But it's always applied to a heavenly being, like an angel who's on the bad side. That's always applied to that type of thing. But that isn't to say the devil there isn't a head one, but who that is, it's the father of lies. I think he preferred to stay hidden. It's hard to tell exactly, pinpoint who the angel is, and he wouldn't.
He's known as the Great Deceiver.
Yeah, the dragon, the great dragon, and he's got many titles.
He doesn't, like you said, he doesn't break the laws. He deceives the person into choosing, because God has given us all free will. We have to make the conscious choice to do right or choose to do wrong and suffer the consequences of both of those actions. Some will be good, some will be bad, but he gives us the choice accordingly. Satan doesn't force anything. He gives you the opportunity to react and respond according to whatever you will do. So I agree with that.
Temptation. Well, he tempts people. Yeah. That's the idea, and then when we do something bad, he's like, see, God, your creation isn't that great. He's the accuser. That's the idea, But again, we're still in the midst of this, but when Jesus came and did what he did, the keys to Hades were given over to him, the keys to hell, he defeated death, and we can now have, peace of mind, in knowing that we're not under the thumb of these evil creatures anymore. If you're filled with the Holy Spirit, a demon can't possess you. It's as simple as that. There's no room for both of them in there, and we have power to cast these things out, and his plan's done. We're kind of in the last stages now where Satan gets to have his little last attempts before he's just thrown in the lake of fire. If you can argue where we are in this timeline, it's not really relevant to my theory necessarily, but it's fun to speculate. I can't give definitive answers on all that, but in terms of the history, that's pretty clear. Yeah.
Right. Timelines are always very skewed, and once you start to say that you're in this timeline, then it almost like people stop listening, because times and numbers and everything, they become very skewed. People become attached to these times and attached to these numbers.
I don't play that game. I'm not a doomsday sayer. I'm not a date setter or anything like that. I just like to go into the history. So anyway, so if we want to talk about the clowns here, I think I've laid a good biblical history so we can get an idea. I've gone into this plenty on the channel, but you loosely now kind of understand the world we were dealing with. Okay. Now, first of all, you have to imagine what a seraphim angel would have looked like, which I believe were the ones who mated with human women. It says,
we do have a couple of descriptions in the Bible, and if I'm not mistaken, weren't the seraphims the one that were also placed outside of the Garden of Eden once they were cast out of it to guard the garden?
That was a cherubim with a flaming sword. Cherubim, so they were a different class. Yeah, the seraphim are a very specific class. They are the dragons. Okay, a seraph is the Hebrew word for the burning bite of a serpent, and seraphim means fiery flying serpent. That's literally what it means. These were the dragons of the past. You find many cultures are dragon worship cultures. China is a prime example of this. They literally worship the dragons. They believe the dragons created the culture and civilization, and wherever you see dragons represented anywhere, they are talking about the Seraphim angels, specifically the bad ones, you know, and usually the
I
ones
was
that,
gonna say
you know,
always a negative connotation though.
I mean,
Very
but
rare.
not all
Certain Asian
Seraphim.
cultures, not all are negative. I say
Yeah,
Asian cultures, they have some that worship them and deify them. We have certain Mesoamerican tribes that had like snake god and
yeah,
chicken god, snake chicken god. It was a weird one. Quetzalcoatl or whatever. I can't pronounce these words.
yeah,
Quetzalcoatl.
But
that's right.
things though, not always negative, but yes, across the world, most cultures have dragons, and most of the time they are seen with fear and reverence, but also like it's understood they're a dangerous creature.
I mean, a fire-breathing dragon doesn't in style like
No.
you think of something scary. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah, but they were a lot smarter than they weren't just beasts. You know what I mean? These were intelligent, shape-shifting angels at the end of the day, and they had their main form was that of a dragon. You know, they took that form, I think, because that was representative of their nature, and you know, of the reptilian kind. You know, and it's fearsome. You know, it's a power symbol. You know, it's dick measuring stuff. I think that these angels were playing a game. They wanted to be seen as gods. What better form to take than a giant fiery snake in the sky? You know. And this is the thing, even like Australia has the rainbow serpent, for example, which created
Yeah.
life. You know, and they have everywhere has the serpent gods and their offspring. Okay, and they all have their own names for it. In Australia, for example, the offspring is the Wangina. And the Wangina is literally said to be the creators of mankind's culture and civilization. And if you look at a representation of a Wangina from the Kimberley region of Australia, the offspring of the rainbow serpents, they look just like clowns. And I'm not even joking. It's literally a clown as we would call it today, with a big red afro, pale white skin, red nose, white ruff around the neck, polka dot patterned clothing. It looks like a clown through and through.
What?
Yeah, I know. It's ridiculous.
Oh,
And yes, you know, and I've made plenty of videos about this, but that's the
how do you
most
spell that? I want to look it up.
WANDJINA. Wand Gina.
Oh man. Okay. Yeah. Wow. Look at this shit here, dude.
Well, I'm going to share the screen for
Yeah,
all
yeah.
of the Patreon and Rockfin members. By the way, you won't be able to see all of the references that we happen to reference as part of the grateful and the great and powerful Paul over here. What he's referencing is the wand. What did you say? It's the Wandjina?
The
Yeah,
one
dude.
Gina. So
Wow.
yeah, you can see the snake, the rainbow serpent in the center of them all, in that middle one, for example. And these are the lightning gods that came to Earth. Nephilim are always linked with lightning in every culture you go to, so they're always associated with bringing rain and lightning and thunder or something. Just like the Heyoka um, creature or demon in the North America tribes, he's a thunder god as well, and he has black and white fractal patterns and jester horns and all sorts of things. But these are the Wanjinas. They are like the earthly offspring of the rainbow serpent, and they look like clowns. They're dressed in a clown costume.
Bro,
You know?
this is crazy. They got the red polka dots. They got the
Yeah,
red noses, the white skin.
yeah.
This is creepy.
Now
It's
they try and say, oh well, symbolically those red polka dots represent raindrops. And these things were like ethereal entities that brought rain with them wherever their giant heads floated around.
I've
I
never seen red rain. That's just me.
I
That's
ca-
just me.
I
Yeah.
call absolute bullshit on that. This is what they look like. This is straight up what they look like. It's serpent features. They have serpent skin because they are half serpent, half human. This is what a half serpent, half human hybrid would look like. Look at them holding tiny people there. You know,
Looking
um,
like they're about to eat them or
Wow.
cook them, dude.
yeah, I mean, and what they do, they repaint these ancient rock paintings. You can see one there, for example, at the top right now in the middle with the red nose, and they repaint these every year. And you have to be a shaman to do it. No, not anybody can just do this because it's like a great honor to do this, and you're not allowed. They consider it extremely offensive if you're not a member of the tribe to paint a Wangina. You cannot do it, and they'll sue you. And they're actually trying to sue an artist, a Belgian artist right now, who's making money off and making artwork based on the Wangina. And they're like trying to sue her for robbing cultural appropriation, you know. But basically, they believe that when the Wangina died physically, they went to a cave and did a self-portrait of themselves before they died. So that's why they have these rock paintings of these Wanginas in this one specific region of Australia and nowhere else. This is where they were hanging out, you know what I mean? This particular version of Nephilim, you know, and there's many
No,
versions.
And
Yeah.
then like 8 of the 10 most deadliest snakes on earth live in Australia, or 9 of the 10, or some shit like that. It makes sense that this would be where the serpent Nephilim would have set up shop.
Oh no, there's more. No, that's not where they set up shop. That everywhere, every continent, every single corner of the earth is covered in these things, and they all have their own cultural different ways of depicting them. That's just the most clownish one I've seen, most overtly like a Western clown I've ever seen. Many other ones are similar featured, but you more have to
Yeah.
make inferences. So most of my work is an anthropological study of all of these cultures, all of the earth, showing the parallels to their versions of the Nephilim. Every culture has their own culturally artistic stylized depiction of Nephilim creatures. Okay.
Not to get you way off topic here, but I have to ask, because you have gone through so much history, so many references, so many topics, just boom, boom, boom. What is your background? How did you get started in this? Did you come from a classically academically trained historian background? Are you an anthropologist? Are you how did you really get started? You said in 2014 you really dove in. Tell me how all this research really began for you.
Maybe it was just curiosity.
Because you said you didn't come from a Christian background.
No, I'm an artist. I have a degree in fine art. I'm a painter, drawer, sculptor, musician, all that type of thing. I play like 10 instruments, and I've always been a creative, inquisitive mind. And
Okay.
I've always looked to nature for beauty, and I was heavily into the sacred geometry stuff for a long time, and I was tripping on acid and taking DMT and everything I can get under the sun to try and see the design in things. And I very quickly realized there is a design to these things, and that's how I realized there is a God. And when searching for it, I went through all the motions of believing I was a god for a while and all this type of thing. I went through the Gnostic stuff, from the New Age to the Gnosticism, to the Hinduism, to Buddhism, to Taoism, and all these type of things. And I'd explored a lot of cultures trying to find my way to understand myself and the world around me. And I only found any true transformative, real, useful truth that actually made me a better person and changed my life and saved me from a life of depravity in Christ. And that's where I found the truth and the biblical perspective in the end. It made everything click into place. So I just wanted to know everything. So I went deep into the history, and I explored the entire world doing that, and I went into it. And I've always been a reader. I've always studied things. Like I said, I have my own degree in fine art. I've written a dissertation on symbolism in the occult and all these type of things. I've always just done this. It's just the world I swim in, and it's where I find joy. I have fun doing this. So that's it, really.
I love it, dude. So you went on your own spiritual path, and this is where you ended up.
Yeah.
I mean,
I didn't think I would be the guy talking about clowns. Trust me, I don't care about clowns. I don't care about them. I'm not a juggalo or anything. You know what I mean? I've never followed clown culture. I've just, they've never even been a thought. It's just a pattern recognition. I know.
I forgot
that,
the Juggalos were even a group. My bad. When you said that, I was like, oh God, forgot about Insane Clown Posse.
You know what's interesting though is that a lot of people have these nightmares of clowns, bro, and they like
it's a certified phobia.
They build like an insane phobia of clowns because they appear to them in their dreams and nightmares and everything.
Yeah.
So I wonder if there's a lot of this resonance that even if they're not fully aware that the Nephilim were fucking clowns
on a subconscious level, yeah,
right, there's some kind of resonance that maybe the subconscious is picking up on of maybe a past history. Or
you know what, I would argue that there's some truth to that, the same way that certain people have a love for or hatred of snakes for whatever reason. You see that it's a very polarizing animal for no reason. Like culturally right now in America, I have no reason to love or hate snakes. It's just a creature. But I have that's my one fear. I guess my one thing I cannot deal with is snakes. Meanwhile, you have other people that absolutely love them. There's a lot of arguable, how you say it, subconscious triggers,
underlying subconscious triggers to them that maybe are not stemmed within your own memory.
Well,
that you experienced.
You have to remember, these were predators. We were its prey. That kind of thing doesn't leave the collective consciousness of humanity very easily. I think it's embedded into our DNA to naturally be fearful and wary of anything that has this kind of pale white face, big wide red lips, big eyes that kind of glow or have a slit like clowns often do with their makeup, wild red hair, elongated foreheads, which cone heads a lot of clowns have as well. These features, we are naturally averted to them because they used to eat us. It's quite simple, and Coulrophobia, as it's known, the fear of clowns, is not the most biggest fear. Snakes are up there along with spiders, and heights and things like that, but it's up there.
Right.
It's top 10, which is weird for humans, that the clowns kind of made it into the top 10 when you think about it. It's very strange.
It really
And
is, because clowns in and of themselves, like, not court gestures, right? Not comedians on the stage of William Shakespeare. We're talking about specifically clowns like we know today, the stereotypical clown. That only came around in the circuses, arguably in the mid 1800s. Like, I think you may be able to argue mimes and that art goes back to like the early 18, maybe late 1700s, but that's a relatively new craft in and of itself.
There were jesters.
But like I said, but they didn't
Yeah.
look like clowns. You
No.
never, no fears gestures.
I
The
can
fear of gestures is not a certified phobia. It's the clown fear. You feel me?
I can
That's like a real
I can
new thing,
explain. I do explain in depth where we get a clown from, and it's a huge part of
go.
my theory. So we'll get into it, okay? So first of all, I just want to say why a clown represents a Nephilim, because in many ways my theory is actually this. I know I say the Nephilim look like clowns, which is true, but my theory is best said that clowns represent Nephilim. Okay, they were created specifically to represent these creatures. The image of a clown is a caricature created for the sole purpose of channeling the spirits of the dead Nephilim. If you dress like the thing, you channel the thing. That is a well understood ancestor spirit worship practice in many cultures all over the earth, and they still do it today. My anthropological study involves me looking at all these ancestor spirit rituals where tribesmen or shamans dress like clown-like monsters for the sole purpose of being possessed by the ancestors. They don't mean grandma or granddad. They mean the disembodied spirits of their ancient gods, the Nephilim.
Oh,
So they
shit.
Hold on. I just realized, why do rodeo clowns dress the way they do to draw the attention of the beast
Yes.
away from the rider when the time comes? Why isn't they just like rodeo workers? Why are they specifically clowns? Now,
Yeah.
that's interesting, sir.
It might even be in the bull's DNA.
I think it's
be scared
inherent,
of the
right?
shit.
To not necessarily this would be a sign of the mark of the beast, although I'm sure that's a talking point. I'm saying that this may be a sign of the sigil magic associated with control of the beast, if you will.
Maybe.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
maybe. No, I'm open to any theory when it comes to this, because
It's all hypothetical. I've never even
Yeah.
heard of this before. This got shot out of my brain 10 seconds ago. I don't know. I could see where certain connections could be drawn for sure.
a lot of my theories were based on associations like you just made, and then when I actually start digging into it, I found it's a literal connection that was actually historically documented. That's why it was done. So who knows? You could be onto something. I mean, like I said, so I've explained there why a clown was created. It was created specifically for the purpose of introducing into the West a ancestor spirit costume that could be worn by secret societies to channel demons, but the public wouldn't recognize it. They would think it's something fun for the kids. So it's hidden in plain sight. The clown is a symbol. It's a symbol for the Nephilim. You wear the costume of a clown, what you're actually doing is putting on the skin that represents a Nephilim creature for the sole purpose of channeling the demonic spirits they represent in the spirit world. This is how the spirit world works. If you mirror what's in the spirit world, you create a channel. You create a portal. You bring the spirit and the physical together by mirroring what they look like. On DMT, people see jesters. Okay?
Yep.
Why? Because they're communing with the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim who looked like that. They looked like clowns. Okay? So the DMT realm isn't a special place. It's not a higher realm. It's not the astral realm out there in the fifth dimension where better entities than us reside. It's the earth. It's just the other side of the veil, the coin, right here where we are. It's the warp to the woof of the rug. It's the messy underside that creates the beautiful projection that we live in right here in a body. It's the place of disembodied forms. Nothing's embodied in that realm. That's where they're trapped, okay? That's where you go when you smoke DMT. You're just seeing where they are, and it's riddled with demons. That's why we shouldn't go there. It's not that the DMT realm is bad. It's perfectly necessary as a function to create this world. It's meant to be there. It's like the plumbing behind the walls of this creation, It has to be there for this to exist, but it's just full of demons, so we shouldn't be messing and going there. And when people go there, they see jesters repeatedly. Okay, so
Well,
that's
that being said, I mean, I've done DMT several times. Now it's a variation. It's the 4-ACO DMT. It's like a hybrid between DMT and mushrooms, essentially. And I know that, I mean, I personally haven't seen clowns or jesters or any of
You also haven't taken a hero's dose yet, have you?
I mean, I have, I'm such a lightweight that everything is a hero's dose.
Fair.
So like I am, bro. Like I ate
Right, no.
literally a half of a 10-gram weed gummy and I was baked out of my mind. And
No,
so, I mean, I'm such a lightweight. I had 2 beers, I'm like buzzing crazy. So
yeah.
whenever I took this, I mean, I felt like I took a hero's dose whenever I took a whole one. So whenever, and this is a pill that you swallow, it's not like smoking DMT, it's just in a different
Yeah.
form. But I know that the few times that I've done it and I close my eyes and I go inside and I'm not, I'm not external. Everything is internal. I close my eyes and I'm trying to get to or experience and observe whatever realm I'm looking at. I got to be honest, bro. Like it's definitely fascinating. I loved it. I mean, it's so much fun to me. All the colors and all the shapes and all the geometry that you see is insane. But I've never
plumbing in the background, right?
Right, but I've never during my experiences, it was never like a scary thing. You know what I'm saying?
No,
Like
the realm
demonic
isn't
realm.
scary. I've been there too. I've done DMT, and it was never scary for me. Don't get me wrong, I get it. I didn't see jesters either initially. In fact, I didn't see any entities. In hindsight, I feel like maybe I was being protected and just being given the ability to see for that second, and come back and then realize, okay, it is a creation. I'm not a god, that type of thing. Something made this. This is way too complicated. I don't understand, And I get it.
Sure.
It's a beautiful realm. It really is. It's God's creation. It's perfectly necessary. It's meant to be there. It's not evil inherently. It's just where the disembodied spirits of these creatures are. So you have to be careful. If you're going there without the full armor of God, without the Holy Spirit, without protection, you're in the middle of no man's land. You're cannon fodder. You're subject to anything. Anything can come up to you and tell you anything, and you're going to believe it because you're just like, whoa, this is insane and I'm overwhelmed. This is crazy. Why wouldn't I believe this angelic jester God in front of me? You know what I mean? Like, that's the point. You would just give in to astonishment and be like, yes, I'll do whatever you say. Of course you can come into my body, whatever, you just let it do it. That's the problem. It's a dangerous place to be. And you might not necessarily, you might go there, get lucky and not get a bullet caught on the way. You might get away with being in no man's land for a second. Doesn't mean you always will be. Every time you go there, you're tempting fate, And long after I got sober from all psychedelics and drugs, I got spiritually attacked heavily, and that's when the demons started to come for me. That's when I realized I was the real, And I saw jesters after I had taken DMT. I had visions like I was back in the DMT realm, a flashback as they're known, And there's the jester right there in front of me, daunting over me as a giant with black and white fractal patterns, a weird head shaped like a jester's hat, but its skull was just shaped that way, a huge wide purple grin, massive glowing purple eyes, you know what I mean? It's just looking down at me. It's like, yeah, okay, I've seen them now, they're real, I get it, and I came back, and it's kind of, this is after I stopped taking all the drugs.
You weren't even tripping. You saw this like being sober mind.
Yeah. So sleep paralysis started to happen. I started to, at one point the room started to go black from the corners, and I went paralyzed, and I felt like I was about to die. And I basically said, "Jesus, help me!" And it stopped instantly. I was back in the room. That's all I could do because I was paralyzed. I couldn't physically do anything else. I think they tried to come for me once I gave up their ability to come into my vessel so willingly. I think if you're taking drugs all the time, psychedelics, opening channels to demons, they're happy for you not to know that that's what they're doing. They'd rather stay hidden. They'll be clever about it, because if you know, then you could discover Jesus at any moment and cast them out, and they don't like that. So they'd rather stay hidden in the West. We're a highly Christianized nation. But if you go to like these other cultures all around the earth, mainly south of the equator, who do these shamanistic rituals that involve heavy doses of psychedelic drugs, the demons aren't hiding there. They're out in the open. You'll always meet them, because their cultures think they're ancestor spirits. They think they are gods. They like them. They want to communicate with them. They want them to possess them. But in the Western Hemisphere, we're too Christianized for that. The demons can't be so out in the open and, let's just go possess everybody and reveal ourselves to everybody all the time. It's too dangerous for them, because they are too in the middle of a war, against God in a sense. They can't just reveal themselves, their position, and get taken out like that. You know what I mean? They have to be cool about it. But you go to Africa, you know, you got a lot of tribes there who are screaming with joy when they see the Zangbito thing suddenly lift up off the ground and start doing backflips with no human inside of it because the demon's in there possessing it. They're clapping and cheering. You know, they want the demons to appear because they think they'll give them power. They'll give them something, some information or something, and that's the whole point of it. It's
So to play devil's advocate to that though, and I'm coming at this from I'm not a Christian. I understand it. I totally get it. But I like to dabble in a little bit of everything. That being said, like, is it like conversely playing devil's advocate here? Can you also say that the only people that demons demonize are Christians? So
No.
essentially, by turning yourself into a Christian, you're opening the door to demons?
No, no, I think it was simply because I used to be a very useful vessel for them. I used to take drugs all the time, drink heavily, do everything under the sun that would be considered sinful and bad and pleasurable. I was a hedonist through and through. I was useful. I was useful. And it's more of a case of if we can't have you, nobody can. I think that was the situation. So they tried to kill me. That's basically what happened. And as I got stronger in faith, focused more, prayed, learned about spiritual warfare, they stopped. They've left me alone now. I don't get spiritually attacked anymore, and I don't think they would dare because they know I have the confidence and faith to do what needs to be done when they turn up. That's the problem. They'll just back off now. You know, but
they're not trying to scare you back into going into your old ways.
There's no point, you know.
And they don't want to smoke, dog. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. It's like being armed. I'm armed now. It's like you don't go for the guy who has a magnum on his left side. You know, leave it. It's not worth it. Whatever. Just keep moving. You know what I mean? Like their weapons are weak against what we have as Christians with strong faith. That's the problem for them. You know, it's
respect.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it. All right. I like understanding. I don't question any of this, honestly. Like I just like understanding the mind of how, a lot of this stuff is understood and how you think about it and how it all works. Like I'm fascinated by all this shit, dude.
A lot of Christians don't understand what I'm saying here. A lot of Christians think fallen angels are demons. They don't know what a demon. They don't even know their enemy. And this is the whole point of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to reveal what the enemy actually is. You know, and if you in any way, shape, or form are encountering entities that have a jester or clown-like visage, you're dealing with the Nephilim specifically. You know, you're dealing with a demon here. I'm trying to warn people. You know, that's if you're in the spirit realm. You know, go ahead.
There's also an argument to say that demons have a very hierarchical rank structure, very akin to how the angelic body does. Then we're talking about demons, not angels. Demons themselves have a hierarchical structure, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it goes in order of who came first. So the OG Nephilim, the originals, they'll be the head of the hierarchy. They are in direct contact with their parents, the angels who created them. You know, they are in cahoots with them. Then below them will be their children and their children's children. And then the hybrid humans will just be on the bottom. The hybridized humans.
So the lineage is basically showing the hierarchy. And basically, so that like if you were half God and half man, then maybe you had more power and more corruptibility or whatever to be able to influence people to sin or whatever. If you have higher God in you than the quarter God who's 3/4 human, then the eighth God who's 7/8 human, but whatever.
I think people need to get out of their minds that demons are in some fire and brimstone dark realm of and they're all red with pitchforks and bat wings and stuff. No, they're incredibly colorful and psychedelic, and they're in a very carnival like place. You know,
the ones that I've seen are not. I can tell you firsthand experience. The ones that I've seen were very dark entities. Well, at least the one, I should say. However, that's not an all-encompassing knowledge of all of them ever. Period. Ever. It
could have just been how he represented himself to you.
I have a theory on what shadow people, shadow entities. People see dark figures, don't they? Quite with their own eyes in the physical realm. I do think when these psychedelic entities manifest into the physical world, you have to understand we are not primed to perceive the DMT dimension all the time. Our perceptions are highly limited. So when they do manifest
I also saw an angel at this time as well. I saw this shadow figure, which I presume to be a demon. And and it had followed me for the vast majority of my childhood, whether I knew it or not. It came to me multiple times in my teenage years and then into my early adulthood. There was multiple times where actually an angel came down to my rescue because I was not equipped to handle what was happening before me. Now, I do not know the name of my demon. I never learned it because couldn't really care less, to be honest with you. Until I finally had like my one-on-one like showdown with him, so to speak. It was a good time. It was a real
His
good time.
demon was representing himself as his deceased grandmother.
That was came to me.
Yeah, they do that. They do that. Yeah, no, they pretend to be anything. This whole talk to your dead relatives con. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as dead humans in spirit ghost form. They're just Nephilim creatures who will pose as your dead relatives. Yeah, that does happen.
It came to me when I was 5. Like I didn't know any better. I was 5 years old. And yes, I was raised in the church and I knew things, but I was 5. I didn't like know things. You know what I mean? So of course I learned as I got older what I was dealing with, but I also didn't know how to deal with it. I realized that I didn't have these tools in my particular tool belt because I was very early in my faith. But again, time goes on, but I can say what the angel itself looked like and his name. But again, the demon itself, the hierarchy that I've seen all went back to, again, and this is speaking strictly from my own personal experience and personal findings, had to do with the color of their eyes. And again, this wasn't like a massive thing, but it was something to the realm of like the golden eyes that it was at one time presenting to me meant that it was of a higher rank than the red eyes that it currently has. So cool, dope, whatever that may mean.
I mean, eye color is seen to be a hereditary thing.
It could be.
Thing, but it didn't take away from his other physical attributes. You see what I'm saying? Like he could still manifest himself as whatever he wants to be seen as.
Yeah.
But the eye color was something pretty much of the limit of his abilities, if you will.
Yeah. Well, I can agree with that. I mean, they were called in the physical realm the glowing ones by many cultures because they had huge glowing eyes, golden eyes, blue eyes, possibly red eyes. They had angelic features. They glowed a radiance off of them that was ethereal, So I do believe that just like their parents, for example, the pantheon of Greek gods, they were always shape-shifting into all sorts of crazy shapes and sizes in animals and things all the time. It's possible the Nephilim also had shape-shifting abilities to take whatever form they want as well. I'm not at all out of the realms of possibility. I do not deny it. I think Zeus once took the form of a bull to rape a sea goddess. You know what I mean?
He did. Yes, he did.
There's all sorts of stories. Go ahead.
Sorry. Once I came forward with my story and I actually made an episode about it, I had a lot of cult members come and hit me up. That's what we call our listeners, by the way, not actual cult members, like Cult of Conspiracy listeners are our cult members. But I had a lot of our cult members come and reach out and say like this coincided with a lot of stories that they heard about or stories that they personally experienced. And it was always these shadow men or dark creatures or things like that. One compelling thing that all of them across the board realized is that they fed off of your fear. Whatever the case was, they wanted you to be terrified of them because they were feeding off of that. So what does that go as far as what you have found?
Well, that's the plot of it, isn't it? Basically,
Yes, Pennywise.
See, when you said Nephilim clowns and you told me that, I was like, hold on. Does he mean it? Because if Stephen King derived it from that, I swear to God. But then as we're talking about this, it's like,
it wouldn't be that far out of the realm of possibility. Stephen King in his early years, he was insane, like a crazy alcoholic, deep into cocaine.
Look at the story of it. Do you realize what the kids had to do to finally make it go away for a few years, Tony? To make it go away? Like the 5 boys or the 7 boys or whatever, and the one chick just went at it ceremonially. So, sex magic and all. Call that what you want. So, as we're saying,
I think in the book he tried to argue that it was the death of their innocence which made them adults, which then killed his ability for them to,
except they had to repeat the process later on in the book to make it go away again, allegedly. So whatever.
I don't know. It was messed up, but either way, these are the thing. A lot of these authors out there have these really unique, incredible stories. They're just retelling old stories and borrowing from the biblical history and making it their own with a bit of a fictional twist.
They look at Star Wars and Harry Potter. Harry Potter is a direct ripoff of Star Wars, just retold and made a lot of money off of it. Same shit.
Okay.
Unpopular opinion, but I stand by it.
Yeah, but in terms of the fear, the louche thing, this does play a huge part in it. And clowns, if you think about somebody dressed as a clown. So clowns kind of elicit either two emotions from people, don't they? Either extreme fear or laughter. The clowns are supposed to be funny, right? So some people are laughing at clowns, sure, okay, but most people are scared, So it's one of the two: uneasy, terror, or laughter. But those are two forms of energy which are very close to each other in terms of hormonal how they happen. There's a very fine line between laughter and crying. Very fine line brain function wise. They're pretty much all using the same parts of the brain. So I do believe when a clown generates such fear in a child, I think the person who's wearing that costume of a clown is channeling a demon who is feeding off that fear it's generating in the person who they know will have that reaction. Monsters Inc., for example, is literally a story about demons in another dimension who feed off the energy of children's screams, but they also use laughter at the end. It's interchangeable, okay?
Yeah.
And I think that's the same, that they're telling us there how this works, how these entities feed off our energy, because they don't have physical bodies to actually feed physically. All they can get is the rush from the energy they generate in people, which is in an ethereal sense. They probably see that, and they can in some way harness it in some way. So there is definitely that element to it, a vampiric nature to them in that respect. Absolutely. And again, it's hinted at in It, isn't it? Because that's what he does. Pennywise generates fear in its victims to charge the blood with that particular chemical. I'm not allowed to say the name of, or else you get banned. And then they can,
Oh yeah, we can't say because you're live streaming right now. My bad.
and then they'll, eat his victims once he's charged them with enough of that fear. That's the point, isn't it? And the clown is just one form it takes because it elicits so much fear in one of the children. And that's kind of the idea, because he takes many forms throughout the whole story, whatever the individual is most scared of. So it's a shape-shifting entity in some respects. I mean, it's kind of hinted everywhere. I mean, even in Spawn, I think it's the Violator or something, is this clown demon who's meant to watch over the Hellspawn to make sure he's getting enough people into hell. And he has two forms, just like It. He's like a spider demon who takes the form of a clown in the physical realm. That's also what It does. It's a spider demon who takes the form. So there's many. These are shape-shifting, fear-sucking entities, that's for sure. And in terms of the history of the clown, which we were going to talk about, and how secret societies are involved in all of this from the very beginning, it's really messed up and deep. You'll find it was, just to summarize very quickly, first of all, Harlequin was the first real clown in theatre. Okay, the Harlequin character. He was a part of something called the Comédie de l'Art movement. It was like a traveling band of actors who were put on improvised shows in villages, and they would just make the money doing that, And
There's
that
a
was
little traveling troupe of actors.
yeah. And they had stock characters which were based after recognizable people any culture could recognize. The daughter of the rich man, the servants, the soldier, just stock characters, generic characters, and they would play against each other. But Harlequin was introduced quite late on, to be honest, during the 16th century. Prior to this, it had been happening for like 1,000 years, and developing slowly. Harlequin was introduced in the 16th century because these traveling actors out of Italy had discovered everywhere they went in Europe had a wild man tradition. So it became a stock character that everyone could recognize in the Comédie de l'Art movements. Harlequin is quite literally a representation of the wild man of Europe, a Nephilim demon. It's not even hidden, it's documented history, that's where it comes from. It's also mixed in with the Italian style, modelled after Dionysus and Mercury as well. So these Mediterranean gods mixed in with the wild man beast of Northern Europe and these Teutonic regions. And it was named after Helicins, the French version of the wild man, and also Arlecchino, which is the Italian name they gave to it, which was named after a Bologna wild man character as well near Italy. And they kind of created this thing called Harlequin, modelled after these demonic gods and beasts. So that's the first clown.
Here.
Go.
Help me out here, because earlier you said that the wild man was more akin to an American Sasquatch. When I think of the Harlequin character, as we think of the caricature as the trope, if you will, it's more of a court gesture with the painted face and all of these things. So where do we go from weird missing link ape man to gesture? Where did that be?
Okay, so Harlequin wasn't originally dressed like that. The original Harlequin wore a black mask covered in hair with a horn sticking out of it. He was all brutal with a huge, horrible shaped upturned nose, and he wore very loose white clothing with tufts of hair stuck to it with multicolored patches. He was meant to represent the wild man beast. He also had a club, which was called the slapstick, and he modelled after the club wielding, hair covered wild man of Europe. That's originally how he was modelled. Only
Is that
throughout
where slapstick comedy came from?
yeah, that's where the slapstick comes from. It's the club of the
Yeah.
Nephilim beast. Yeah. So anyway, he was supposed to be the demonic character in the show. He had magical powers. He could slap the stick on the stage, and the whole scene would change. He could do backflips and somersaults and tumble and roll almost as though he was flying, like he had magical abilities that weren't human. That was kind of his role. He would be rude and crude and rough. He would stick his stick up people, you know what I mean? And he would do all sorts of things. He would pretend it was his phallus, he would just do anything he can to get that blushing reaction out of the characters, He was rude and brutal and cruel. He was a demon. That's the point of Helikins or Harlequin originally in the Commedia dell'arte stock characters. He was modelled after the demonic wild man. That was his point. Throughout the centuries, his costumes got a bit tighter. The patches became a bit more uniformed, and it became the diamond-shaped harlequin pattern you recognise more so today. But this is the problem. As his costume changed, so did his character. He became less of a demon, and he became more of a fancy dandy about town, and he became a lovesick fool chasing after the daughter of the rich man. He was no longer the demonic character he used to be. So there was kind of a void in theatre by the 1800s. Who was going to play the demon character anymore if Harlequin isn't acting like this anymore? So yeah, this is the wild man. There's, again, many versions all across Europe. The cookery is a good example in Bulgaria that still happens today. If you type in Kukeri, Bulgaria, yeah, this still happens.
Yes, it does. I've seen this. They do a big dance, and they do that because the flowing costume is meant to ward off spirits, allegedly.
Yeah,
Looks like a yak.
Yeah, so we have a different in Europe. We have a different view from every other country. We believe in something called an apotropaic view of this. So we believe we dress like things to scare them away. Everywhere else
Like Krampus in Germany.
Yeah, most other places on the earth dress like things to attract them. But in the West, for some reason, we have this weird view that we're scaring them away. I think it's a lie. I think it's the opposite. I think you dress like the thing to channel the thing, whether you know it or not. You're not scaring
Like
away,
like the evil eye.
Yeah, you're not scaring away a demon by dressing like a demon. Trust me. Okay, they're not stupid. Give these things some credit. They're ancient. You know what I mean? They've been around for a while. They're not idiots. But this is their version, and you find a lot of clown-like features in some of these depictions. And a lot of Eastern Europe is quite heavily influenced by an ancient Thracian culture that was around as well. So they have quite a Dionysian type influence. And these are the festivals of Dionysus that they're recreating here, where it was mass revelry and drinking and, partying and sex. And then a period of fasting came afterwards. This kind of got Catholicized into things like Fat Tuesday and Lent, and Ash Wednesday.
We're in Louisiana, bro. Mardi Gras is a whole thing here. We know about Fat Tuesday.
And that's where these all come from originally. These are the cultures you get Mardi Gras from. Mardi Gras itself, people say you need to cover it. It's like, well, actually, I've covered the origins. Why do I need to cover this bastardized offshoot of a modern sense? This is where it really comes from. These ancient cultures here, and these are the wild man traditions that they were witnessing. These troops, so they created Harlequin to represent these type of characters. And he evolved. Like I said, he evolved into the tight leotard wearing, fancy, sleek masked version as history went on. And he kind of lost that edge. He stopped being so demonic. And it left a void. Who's going to replace the demonic character? Well, at the same time, another stock character was someone called Pedrolino. This is who became Clown as we know it today. Pedrolino was the servant of the rich man. Okay, and Pedrolino wore just a plain white garb. No, nothing on it, just white. Boring rags. He's a servant, he's nothing. He's a lowly Elizabethan dog's body. He didn't have anything about him that was outstanding or extravagant. Not like a clown we would kind of call today. Pedrolino. Yeah, Pedrolino. You get some examples of him up and we'll see, but he's not special, you know. He's not really a clown per se. So the one there with the black pom-poms, that's actually based off the Poirot. Now Poirot is the French version of Pedrolino. Okay, and he was
And
kind
wasn't
of
this very famous from an opera that went like the equivalent of viral for that day and age?
yeah, and people loved this sad sack, depressing, sad clown called Poirot. Okay, based on Pedrolino, and Pedrolino was always pining after the daughter of the rich man, Columbine, but she didn't want Pedrolino. She was always chasing after Harlequin, so he was like just sad all the time and depressed that he couldn't have this love that he wanted, you know. And the French really connected with him and loved this character and thought it was amazing. The French clown, this Poirot character, was really, you know, loved by the French for some reason. Maybe French people just associate with sad characters more so, I don't know. But if you look at the same time, Britain had their own version of the Harlequinade going on, and they created the British clown, which was a bit more colourful, but it was still based on Pedrolino. It was still quite relatively not that wild, you know. It was still something similar to this white-faced clown, just with boring garbs on, you know. But the clown character in Britain was more of a drunk, a lout, a fool, tripping over things, being foolish and silly, stealing sausages and, you know, drinking too much, very much just a drunken lout, you know. That was the British version. This is the more refined French version of the clown. Each, you know, Britain had its own thing, mainland Europe had its own version of this ancient comédie de l'art tradition. So in 1800s, the British clown changed dramatically. It turns out there was this actor called Joseph Grimaldi. So if you want to type in Joseph Grimaldi, this was where the modern day version of a clown that we know today began to appear. He is known as the King of Clowns. He is the one who created modern clowns as we know them today. Also, the story of history goes, that's not true. Everyone will tell you Joseph Grimaldi invented the image of a modern clown. It's just inaccurate history. He definitely played a huge role in popularizing the image of a clown because he played the role so brilliantly, but he did not invent the costume. Okay, he simply wore the costume. The inventor of the costume was somebody called Charles Dibdin. Now, Charles Dibdin Jr. took over the theatre in which this actor was performing at the time, and he introduced with his new reign of terror over the theatre a brand new costume for the clown. He changed the image of Pedrolino, as you just saw earlier, into this. Okay, and it's never explained why. It's never explained where his inspiration came from. It's just that he did. He just said, I've changed the dress of the clown to be something more extravagant, something bigger, something more bold, something more brash. And he invented this costume, and Joseph Grimaldi was a young performer at the time. He smashed it. Everyone loved the way he performed clown. It was incredible. It was hilarious. And from that day forward, this became the standard for clown costumes. This actor popularized the costume, yes, but he did not create it. Now, Charles Dibdin Jr. was the son of a prominent, incredibly famous, and powerful Freemason and musician of the time.
There we go.
He was the son of a media mogul of our, as we would have it today. You know, he was like the Harvey Weinstein of the day. You know what I mean? He was a big player.
Someone who would have a definite understanding and knowledge of what would get people's attention, keep people's attention, and make them feel a certain way based off of the colors and schemes and patterns of the thing you're presenting. Correct?
Yeah, well, he wrote, this guy, Charles Dibdin Sr., the father, the Freemason, wrote maritime songs, musicals that the sailors of the British Army were singing on the way to India, you know what I mean? He was well renowned, you know, even today at the proms, we still sing one of his songs in England, you know what I mean, to introduce it. Tom Bowling, you know, it's actually, this guy was huge in the day, relatively obscure and forgotten now, but during the day, he's practically a rock star, Charles Dibdin Sr., you know, and his son got to take over one of the most biggest theatres in London, Sadler's Wells. naturally nepotism at its finest. You know, why wouldn't the son of a Dibdin get to take over a theatre? You know, why wouldn't that happen? You know, of course he gets to do that, you know. And his other son, Thomas Dibdin, just a few years prior, had been running the same theatre as well. So it runs in the family, you know, and they all write songs and write the plays and write the things that people see in that day and time, you know. The Illuminati, Freemasons have always been involved in the entertainment industry, and what we get to see as the people. They create the narrative. They were just the narrative writers of the day. So
For
this
sure.
so this son of a Freemason turns up in the 1800s, bang on 1799, the turn of the century, and changes the costume of a clown. This hasn't been done in hundreds of years. It's unheard of. You don't change a
Well,
stock. You don't change a
hold on
stock
now.
character. The
The
stock.
stock
Yeah.
character had changed though, correct? We had the wild man, the beast with the slapstick, and then it had changed to more of this other feature.
It
So when
developed. It
did that
developed.
happen?
It developed slowly in style, but the costume was always pretty much the same. And then
Okay.
around the same period, Harlequin did have a big costume change as well. Someone called what's his name? I want to say Charles Hughes, who was running the other theatre at Drury Lane down the road. When the clown changed its costume, he says, "Okay, well, I need to do something now." So he changed Harlequin to be this really thin, lithe, tight-skinned, diamond sailor hat wearing version we have today. So yeah, that did also change around the same time to become he rather than embodying a demon anymore, let's make him represent more of what he is, a modern man about town. You
So
know?
even the common trope altogether was kind of, it was already getting antiquated. It was kind of a scene that was kind of folklore that your grandma told you growing
Yeah.
up. Nobody really cared about it. And when one person did something drastic, this other person did something drastic, which led this other person to do something drastic, which pretty much they all used that trope of the wild man as the sacrificial lamb to bring about the new character in all of their tropes. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it kind of. I think
Okay.
I think because Harlequin wasn't as popular anymore. Clown was all the rage. I think they saw an opportunity to introduce a new demonic image into modern media of the day, which is theatre. So they introduced this new version of Pedrolino, this clown image, which looks psychedelic and like a monster, as you just saw there. There's all these colourful patterns. And there's a reason why that image was chosen, and I've discovered why. It turns out the Dibdins were really well connected with India. It turns out Charles Dibdin Sr., his brother Thomas, was a member of the East India Company, the Royal Navy, and he was
Had to have the East India Company make their way into the
yeah.
conversation. I swear to God, it always comes back. The Rothschilds are next. I'm sure Bill
well,
Gates.
well, either
What?
either way, Charles Dibdin spent a lot of time in India, going back and forth to Calcutta, because that's when the colonization of India was happening. You know, it's during that time period at its peak. You know, and he was even going to move to India at one point in his memoirs, but the weather was so bad he had to cancel his trip, and he decided against it in the end and went off and did more theatre stuff in England. You know, but because of his brother's connection to India, he also had this connection to India. His brother actually died doing the war in India, you know, and he made a song dedicated to him, which is called Tom Bowling, which is very famous today still. But you know, India and the Dibdins are well connected. I think they were well acquainted with Indian iconography. So the Indian version of the Nephilim is called a Rakshasa. That's their version of a demon. They call it the Rakshasa demons. Sometimes they have them guarding temples in places like Thailand as well and things like that. But generally speaking, all of Hindu culture, which covers that oceanic region all the way to Bali, they all have their own version of a Rakshasa demon that looks very similar. Now, if you we can maybe get the images up to show you exactly what happened here, but if you type
Yeah,
in Kala Sung Sang, so I'll spell it out for you: K A
dude,
L
that one, bro.
Kala. So Kala space and then Sung Sang. So it has its sounds SUNG SANG. Sung Sang. And that's just put demon or something. Yeah, so there we go. So look at that second one, for example, there, the black and white image. This is a typical Rakshasa face, but this one happens to always be in an upside down position. But all Rakshasas pretty much have a face like that. These are what Nephilim would have looked like. They always have the tongue sticking out like a clown, you know, joking, gestury, big, wide, toothy grin, huge, bulging eyes, psychedelic coloured clothing, patterns all over the skin. But this one particular, so bear that image in mind, and now type in Joseph Grimaldi again. And I'm sure we'll find the image quite quickly if you just go into images.
All right.
Yeah, so there he is, second row to the right, doing a handstand.
Ah, shit.
Damn.
It's the same creature. So this new costume that Charles Dibdin Jr., the son of the famous Freemason, introduced was modelled after the Rakshasa demons found in India. So he introduced a demon visage from a foreign land into Western theatre. So the modern clown is literally modelled after Indian demons. The original clown character Harlequin was modelled after European demons, but this switch was made in the 1800s and this version was popularised instead. So, and just to prove the point here, and they know this, all media is controlled by Freemasons and secret societies. Type in Season 2, Episode 2, Supernatural.
I do love Supernatural. That show really did cover every single conceivable base that I could even come up with.
Supernatural. And there it is. It's about a killer clown who is actually a Rakshasa demon. That's what the demon's called in the thing. They call it a Rakshasa demon. And
Oh, God.
and I get this. I discovered this after I made my own connections. Someone sent me a link to explain this to me. So they always tell you in media, this is a hidden knowledge. This is an occulted knowledge I'm explaining here, and I've just discovered. But they've always been telling us, and even in Supernatural, they discover, oh, this is a Rakshasa demon. It feeds on human beings, but it has to be invited into the home. So what it does is it looks like a clown to get the children to let it in the house. And then it can eat the parents. That's the fictional bullshit nonsense that the story is made up for this show. But the fact that they've associated a Rakshasa demon with a clown is the point I'm trying to make.
Wow.
Because
Connected.
the original clown in the 1800s, when that image was invented, was modelled after Rakshasa demons of India.
And I love how you mentioned Monsters Inc. earlier, because I feel like this is a perfect personification of that. The same character trope that was, like you said, originally modeled after European demons, fed off of people's innate fear, right? Yeah. It became more of a comedic trope with time. And then once they rebranded it, it was seen as strictly a comedic trope.
Yes.
Just like in Monsters Inc., they once were after the screams and then they were after the laughs. I'm loving it, man. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I'm only scratching the surface here. Like this goes all throughout human history. This goes really incredibly deep. It's stupid how much this theory actually keeps going. Even I'm surprised at how much I keep uncovering the further I go. All right, it's silly. Never mind just looking at every single culture and their own versions of ancestor spirit worship and how they all look and dress the same. I mean, just another example. People dress like clowns to channel these entities. Type in the Karawai tribe of Papua New Guinea. Just a random one.
Dude.
So these are cannibals. Okay, by the way, these eat people. So Karawai is Korowai. Karawai tribe. Yeah. Type in Karawai tribe of Papua New Guinea. And let's just look at some of these. And I don't maybe type in like ritual garb or face paint or something like that. I don't know.
I was gonna say, what aren't there the tribe that have the giant clay masks they wear?
Like right here?
Oh
That's
yeah,
not-
that's in Papua New Guinea too. Yeah, they're the mud men of the Azuro tribes of Papua New Guinea.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, they've all got their own version. I think some
Another
of these
very interesting tribe. These dudes carve out and like form their own like helmets to look like demons out of clay that they wear and do like a dance to ward off.
Yeah.
Spirits.
Look up the Azura Mudmen. Yeah, look at them. They're good as well. The image I need isn't visible right now. On this one, but Azura Mudmen. I think that's what they're called, Mudman tribe. There's an example there. Yeah, Asaro Mudmen. Yeah, and they dress, pale the skin up with white clay, and they put on these clownish-looking, wide-grinned masks. They're trying to emulate something that they once experienced visually. And you find this everywhere, and they consider it a symbol of power, and They claim they do this to scare away other tribe members and stuff. But that image they're creating is the face of the same demons all over the earth. And for example, let's look at. Do you know Medusa? You've all heard of Medusa, right? In
Of
Greek,
course.
you know, a gorgon.
Sure.
That's actually a gorgon, one of 3 gorgons in Greek mythology. So type in Medusa. This is what you imagine, isn't it? This is what you're told Medusa looked like. She looked nothing
Yep.
like.
Hair of snakes could look at you and turn you to stone. The whole trope, yeah.
She looks nothing like this. This is not what Medusa's depicted as in real Greek artwork. Type in Gorgon.
Okay, here we go.
Medusa Gorgon or just
Just
Gorgon?
Gorgon.
Just Gorgon. Yeah, Gorgon. O-N, yeah.
Spelled it wrong.
Yeah.
Gorgon, Iran. Who knew?
Scroll down. So that one there, for example, on the arm, that one that's like at the top right now, the second one in. Click on that, we might get more. Not that one, next one along. The one that's in stone.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. So this is more akin to what she actually looked like. Her hair isn't snakes, it's dreadlocks, and they have a big wide grin with the tongue sticking out. Very common image. Scroll down on that image there. You might get some more similar ones underneath. That will get us closer to where we need to be. There you go. So no, on the actual image, if you scroll down, yeah, there's another example of it. Next to her head cut off there, can you see the tongue sticking out? Yeah. So this is what they actually look like. They're called Gorgonians. So if you put IAN at the end of Gorgon, these are what they put on their shield.
It's like the Demigorgon, bro, from Stranger Things.
Gorgonian. It's coming up with random stuff here that it shouldn't be. But put Gorgonian Greek. I'll probably narrow it down. Gorgonian Greek. Okay, here this is better. So they put these on shields and things as a form of protection because this is what what's the name? The Greek goddess. I'm blanking right now. The most famous Greek goddess of war. What's her name? I should know this. I've said it thousands of times. Perseus gave her the head of the Gorgon, and she put it on her chest as a pendant for protection after he beheaded Medusa. So that's why they have it on shields and things. But click on that one there with the wings, for example, that circular one with the wings. And you'll see what it looks like. Next to the image of coral on the top, it's like a circle shield with wings. Can you see? Right there, that one there, yeah. So this is a shield example. And you see the Gorgonian in the middle. It's this weird-looking thing with the tongue sticking out, with a wide serpent grin. This is just like the masks the Mudmen of Azura are wearing. It's the same image. They're just like Rakshasa demons of Hindu mythology as well. There's a Gorgonian on top of a temple. Can you see? To the side there, yeah. She always has a one arm pointing up, another hand pointing down, a lot like as above, so below, like the Baphomet symbol, with the serpent caduceus between the legs, a lot like you see Azazel always depicted as. It's the same creature. So there's Athena with the Gorgonian on her shield with her owl.
It was
Wow.
Yeah.
With Moloch the owl, absolutely.
Yeah. So if you go to you're using DuckDuckGo, maybe use Google search engine for this, but just type in Athena owl pottery, and we'll try and find the one I'm talking about. Athena owl pottery.
Well, you know that Athena's owl was the same one Moloch that they sacrificed to at Bohemian Grove every year, and there's a whole lot.
Right at the top row, right at the end. Then you just had it. Maybe scroll down. You'll probably get it. Yeah, top row, right at the end. Look at this one in particular, and see if you can get a good, decent sized image of it. If you go into it and zoom in, you will find a high quality image of this one definitely. If you click on it, it might take you straight to the proper image, high resolution, and then try and get a good look at it. So on her chest right there is the Gorgonian I was mentioning. This is Medusa, and if you can get a high resolution image up, it looks just like a clown, and I mean that. Like,
oh wow, all right, yeah. Let me try and find a better one.
Yeah,
that one's not zooming in enough.
But it's got to be that piece of pottery.
It's that piece of pottery in particular, yeah. If you click on that and then click on the pottery image, it might come up. I don't know. Check images. Yeah, scroll down. There it is. Right there. A bit closer. Yeah, so click on the image. There's a high resolution version if you go into Wikipedia. Click on it again, and there it is.
Oh shit!
Wow.
So the
You know,
Gorgons
see Medusa, bro.
are literally half human, half reptile hybrids. They are Nephilim creatures. That's the point.
Wow.
So a Gorgon is their version of the Nephilim. Okay, and here you have a Gorgon's head on. As the myth goes, it was gifted to her by Perseus after he beheaded Medusa, and she wears it as a pendant on her chest because she's a giant goddess. The head's tiny to her, you know, it's like a necklace. There it is on her chest, and it looks just like a clown with the tongue sticking out. This is just what the Kalasungsang looked like with his tongue sticking out in India, is it not? You know, this is what this center of the Aztec calendar looks like if you look at that from the North Americas. You know, this tongue sticking out entity is everywhere, and this is the Nephilim. And it even says in the Bible, you know, to whom do you stick out your tongue? It's kind of this mocking attitude towards God type of thing. That's where you find these creatures. This is what they are. This is what they did. They positioned themselves into positions of power, rulership, so they're embodied everywhere, you know. But this is where we get a clown from. This is what they're modeled after. Whether it's a Rakshasa demon or not, you're talking about a Nephilim creature, which are all over the earth, depicted in many artistic styles. The
Wow, even the
a
Aztec calendar, that is crazy.
So you're saying that these are basically dragons?
These are hybrid offspring of dragons who mixed with human women, yes.
Okay. Wow.
Wow, I mean, you really make your point by saying this is really all over the world, bro. That's crazy that the Aztecs,
but then if you look in, you know, obviously the clown evolved a lot from the original Joseph Grimaldi version, which is directly a copy of Rakshasa demons. Okay, I think the Freemasons refined the image as time went on. Remember, the Shriners have their own clown sects, where if you become a Shriner, you have to dress up like a clown and go entertain children at hospitals, which basically is a giant loosh farm for the demons. They're wearing the ritualistic garb to channel the demon, just like all these other cultures do, you know what I mean? And they go to terrify children. I believe these secret societies use this costume to involve in their rituals. So, you know, circuses became huge as time went on. Out of the theatre became the circus. Okay, so Joseph Grimaldi was just a theatre performer. Circuses are something else. Circuses are a Freemason invention through and through. You know, P.T. Barnum and Bailey, the biggest circus performer who brought the freak show into the circus, he was a member of the Odd Fellows. You know what I mean? Which is a huge organization which many powerful people have been a part of, presidents and all sorts. You know what I mean? And even King George was a member of that one. You know, it's insane.
As well as your boy Alfred Pike, who wrote the book Morals
Absolutely,
and Dogma.
absolutely,
He was a very prominent member of the Independent Order of Odd Fellows, as well as a very prominent Mason of all types of rituals and rites and sub-addendums and titles behind his name for fucking paragraphs.
Oh yeah, Winston Churchill, Charlie Chaplin as well, Ulysses S. Grant. Many people have been members, you know, and he obviously.
Now, to that point, let me ask you something. You mentioned something a little earlier that I'm kind of glad as we're talking about the political leaders. Let's talk about royal blood for a moment.
Okay.
Now, are you of the belief there's a couple of different opinions of the whole quote unquote blue blood faction across all of Europe? Mm-hmm. There are some that say that it is of Christ's blood descendant lineage because of something through the Da Vinci Code. I do not believe this, but that is a theory.
Merovingian.
What is it? It's a theory. It's a theory. Then there's another that says that all of the royals are actually descendants of these Nephilimic deities through one way or another. That's why it is so like they clutch their pearls and gasp when you would even think of marrying a commoner. By that, they mean a full-blooded human. Yeah. Now, I don't know, but I'm curious. As you've gone through all of these rabbit holes, I know you've gone down this one. What are your thoughts?
It warrants its whole video in its own right, you know, to go through the histories. But I side with Gary Wayne on this one, that yes, most royal families they believe themselves to be descendants of Nephilim. Yeah. The House of the Dragon. House of the Dragon is the umbrella term to describe the whole family situation. They believe they have the divine right to rule because they have angel blood in them. That's the whole point, you know, they are part angel. They literally consider us lesser than them for that very reason. They are part divine, we are not. It's that simple, yeah. I mean, whether it's true, I don't know, but they certainly believe it's true.
They believe it's ordained by God in order to hold that title. Otherwise, it's literally God's law. if they were not meant to be born in this royal family with this bloodline, then they would have been born as a commoner. God chose them to be born into this family, therefore
Well,
ordained to lead people.
Dude,
which
loads of people thought that Queen Elizabeth was a lizard woman, bro. Like, how many pictures or how many videos do you see with the slit eyes?
Man,
And by the
yeah.
way,
but you can
I
talk
mean,
about England's mama like that.
nah, fuck her, dude. But by the way, like, I've said this before, but my son was born on the day that Queen Elizabeth died. I saw that as a good omen.
well,
See that for
I-
Princess Di.
the whole reptilian hybrid creature, I'm not into the opinion that we have like lizards wearing human skin. You know, I
Not like
think
Men in Black.
I think the modern day iterations of the Nephilim bloodline look very human now. It's very watered down, very hybridized and mixed within humanity. Impossible to distinguish between who has it and who doesn't, type of thing. I do think those of the Nephilim bloodline are probably more susceptible to be better channels for the spirits of the Nephilim. And a lot of these bloodlines, these families do that, and that's why they're a part of these societies and these cults that are involved in the satanic ritual sacrifice and abuse and all this type of thing to create the energy to do the rituals, to channel the demons and to appease their gods. And it's really twisted. They're basically just the physical foot soldiers of these spiritual entities. The humans are
So
involved, in these secret
I'm with you.
societies. Yeah.
I'm with
The,
you. Now, let me ask you this, and this is
yeah.
kind of off topic, but I have a feeling it's going to be on topic. Do you believe in extraterrestrial life, i.e., aliens?
No, I think they are fallen angels and demons who pretend to be extraterrestrial from out of space. I think they are certainly extraterrestrial in the sense that they are from Earth. They're very terrestrial in that sense. you know.
Do you
Um,
believe the Earth is round or flat? Also, as a sub question.
I don't know. But I don't believe it's what we've been
Love that
told.
answer.
I
Okay,
don't.
fair
Yes.
enough. Fair enough. Do you believe we have other planets in existence, or that we are solo, only the thing here that's actually happening?
I think we can see things in the sky we call planets, but I do believe they're angels.
Oh shit.
You believe that actually the planet itself is an angel? Like if I look through a telescope and see Mars on a night where it's like very clear to see the red planet,
I
you
think
think I'm looking
I
at actual
think
angels?
I think they are the wandering stars that left their first estate who are going to be punished severely for doing that. And they have been worshipped as gods ever since they did that. They made that choice.
Oh
The actual
shit.
planet itself, you
Yeah.
don't believe is actually like there?
I don't think they're actually a big round rock sphere in space. No, I think they're actually quite small and insignificant, and I think they have an allotted place they should have remained by God's design. And this is the thing about the nature of angels: when they move from their allotted place, they're changing the nature of the creation of God and reality itself. It's no trifling matter for an angel to leave its position. It messes with the fabric of reality. They have a role to play in creation. I think all of creation, you hear of things like river spirits or tree spirits or spirits of the sea or spirits of the sky or rain gods. These are angels who have a role to play in making creation actually happen. They're like a cog in a machine. You remove that cog, or that cog decides to get conscious and just disappear and break the rules of where it's supposed to be, you break the machine. That's the rebellion of the angels. They broke God's creation when they decided to leave their first estate. I think I
Oh
think I
shit.
think creation is incredibly psychedelic and trippy and weird. I don't think it's what we've been told. I really
Yes,
don't.
my brother. Yes, preach. I'm
Crazy.
right there with you. I do want to add another little weird story, and I'll leave it up to y'all to see if this correlates. But those who listen to the show, they know that I'm a past life regressionist. I do hypnotic regression. And one of the very first times that I myself got hypnotized, I went into a past life. Now, do with past lives with what you will. It doesn't matter. I don't care if you think they're real or not. You're still seeing some kind of images. I kind of related to something that's going on in the trippy verse whenever you would take DMT or something like that. I think that it's pertaining to that same kind of energy.
Mhm.
That being said, in one of my past lives, dude, I was like some kind of watcher over a planet. I didn't really know what I was, but I knew that I was some kind of watcher. I was like a watchman, a guardsman of some sort. I knew that I was above this planet wherever I was. I didn't know, maybe I could have been a star, maybe I could have been a god. I didn't exactly know what form I took. But that being said, I was still a watcher. Eventually, I got to the point where I was tired of like I was there, but people didn't know to ask for my help. And I got tired of that role of just being a watcher, not being able to help anybody in that stance. So then I come up with the idea of going over to, whoever was in charge. I perceived him to be like some kind of bearded man. Some people say that was Odin. I don't know, left up for interpretation. But I asked this, and this is the reason why I asked that question earlier about the angels and did they decide to leave or were they kicked out? So I went up to that, maybe it was God, I don't know, whoever it was. And I asked, I was like, look, I feel like I'm not really making an impact. I feel like there's more that I can do. I feel like if there's a way for me to be able to help the people there rather than being up here, I feel like I'd be of more, a better service. And so Odin or God or whoever it was took his staff, put it on both sides of my shoulder. And then as soon as he touched my head with it, I was then like, this is so weird, bro. And I'm sorry, but as soon as he touched my head, I was zooming through and I was now coming through a woman's like birth canal. Like I was being born as a human. And I thought that was one of the trippiest things ever. So that's why I was wondering, like, if in that past life regression, whether it's real or not, maybe it was just some kind of representation of something, who knows? Is it possible that that would be some sort of representation of what a fallen angel would do? And if so, I mean, would God allow that to happen? I guess is my question.
It depends on what level of trust you have with God, I suppose. But who am I to say that what God can and cannot do? But your story actually is pretty much the same story of the four dragons and the Jade Emperor in China. So these dragons who are seeing the people die of thirst. Okay, they are thirsty and they need water. There's a horrible drought, and these dragons are sea dragons. They belong in the sea. They are sea serpents. Their place is to be in the ocean. Okay, and they're watching all these people thirst, and they feel like something should be done about this. So they went to the Jade Emperor and they asked permission to bring rain to the people to deal with this drought. And now in this story, the Jade Emperor was a bit of a foolish ruler and didn't really care about the people. And he was too busy being distracted by his musicians at the time. And he was like, yeah. And he said, no, don't do anything. Leave them alone. I'll sort it out. Don't worry about it. I've got these people. You don't have to do anything, guys. You go back to the sea. Okay. And he kind of ushered them out. Anyway, weeks passed. Nothing was done. So the dragons went back to the Jade Emperor and they saw that he was still just being distracted by stuff and not paying attention to his creation. So the dragons decided, well, let's just do it ourselves. We'll just make rain happen. So they broke the law of God and they left their allotted place and they made it rain. And their punishment was then to be put under a mountain and locked into Tartarus, basically. It's the biblical story from a different perspective involving dragons, and the Jade Emperor, or God, was a narcissistic fool who didn't pay attention in that story, and the dragons were positioned as benevolent beings who were just trying to help humanity, but that story is of them wanting to be more involved, asking God for permission, but in that story, God said no, but they did it anyway,
They did.
You ever seen the movie Raya?
No.
You haven't seen the Disney movie Raya?
No, I didn't see that one.
You have a daughter. I'm surprised. Anyway, okay, if you ever check
some
it out,
get through, some don't.
Well, it is a great story told about the folklore about Bali, which is, or Burma, excuse me, which is Southeast Asia. The water dragons, the bringers of rain, if you will, are trying to save humanity against this dark force that's kind of all encompassing and consuming everything. Mm-hmm. My point is, though, that is a sub story based off of this story from the Jade Emperor.
Yeah.
And then when they talk about they had to be bandaged underground, they had their own story version of that, where they literally cocooned themselves in a cave to hold the key of it all, the sacred orb of dragons, or whatever the hell it was called. Anyway, the heart of it, or whatever. My point is, though, all across Asia, you hear stories of this very similar thing. And in Tartaria, we now call that Mongolia, which is where the Hun came from and Genghis Khan came from. Yeah. So, of course, these stories have made their way across all of Asia into Europe whenever that's, conquest took over. The stories went from Europe all the way into Asia through multiple sources, Silk Road being a chief among them, I would say. So you have all these stories that blend across and you see the comparisons. Absolutely.
I thought it was interesting as well in the original. I've seen that film, by the way. I know what you're talking about. But when you have a kid, you end up seeing all these things. You know what I mean?
It is. Like, I didn't like Encanto, but I had to see it 45 times because whatever.
I loved Encanto. I thought it was awesome.
It was a plotless movie.
But I thought
The whole thing about like he's living in the walls, this one cousin that can hear everything has heard him the whole time. And like we're just skipping over that because yay, story plot. Like, what was
I
the
remember.
point? Her family was mean to her for nothing and then got over themselves. That was the point.
I think the point was just to encourage magic to children, basically, and get into,
And to make money.
Yeah,
Try to
and to
drain
make
as
money.
much as
But
they can out of consumers.
Well, it was to show Mirabelle's her magic was that of bringing the family back together.
It's not
yeah,
magic.
well,
That's
that was
being
the
normal
happy
family
ending.
member.
That was the happy ending they definitely forced
Yeah.
upon everybody. But in terms
Yes.
of the Jade Emperor story, it's interesting because the first thing he says to the dragons when they come to him is, "Why have you left your allotted place?" He's angry
Yeah.
that they've left where they need to be, because they need to be in the sea to make sure the ocean does what it's supposed to do. The tides move in the right place. You know, it's
Or
they're
that
cogs
certain
in.
things need to stay below the surface, i.e., possibly the Leviathan. Maybe these dragons are there to like make sure that what stays at the bottom of the Marianas Trench stays, in fact, at the bottom of the trench. And so when you get there, he's like, "Yo, what are y'all doing here? Who's watching the fucking ocean right now?"
Well, they all have a role to play. Every angel has, there's
Yeah.
millions, and they all have their own individual role to play in making sure everything goes how it's supposed to go, So when a third of the angels rebelled and left their allotted position, I think reality got extremely trippy and corrupted and messed up in ways we just cannot even fathom or comprehend. We cannot comprehend what reality used to be like before that rebellion, because the angels, like I said, are these intense entities that need to be in the machine for it to work properly and are not. They've left, So you have to think about it that way. It's weird. It's a weird sort. But in terms of past life stuff, I don't know about that. I don't know if you used to be an ancient god who's now come back to save humanity and have a more active role. Probably not, from my own opinion.
Oh no,
Um,
I'm not that full of myself to think that that's who I am. You know
but
what I mean? I'm one of
but
those people.
there's definitely agendas out there to make people believe they are gods. The first lie from the serpent in the Garden of Eden was, "You will be as gods, and your eyes will be opened if you eat that fruit God said not to eat." It's to be a god is the main lie and promise. So it's possible you have that vision because something out there is trying to convince you you're a god. I don't know, but one thing that is
No, I mean,
interesting.
even to get into what Jesus said, "Are ye not gods?"
But he was
Now,
talking to the Elohim. He was talking to the divine council. He wasn't talking about humans when he said that. That's a misquoted thing many times, especially by the New Age types. But no, he wasn't talking to humans when he said that. He was talking to the divine council, the Elohim, the
I
angels.
always say, bro, you got to look at the time, place, and audience. Don't just take one scripture. Read the
Yeah.
entire chapter while you're at it. Get the entire view. Look at who he is speaking to. Who is he speaking about? What references are made? And if there's any question marks there, do some more digging.
Well, that gets into even the muddled question of, are we as humans the creation that God always wanted, or are we some kind of sect of some bloodline of the fallen? I mean, we don't know that. Like there's no way of knowing that. I mean, it even says like within our brain, there's a reptilian part of our brain, bro.
I think
Like that should
I think
exist.
I think the corruption does run deep through all of us. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
I think that's why we need to be born again. That's why we need to be saved.
But that's also why we needed Jesus. See, all of
Exactly.
what we're talking about right now, these are all Old Testament things. These are old, ancient connections to the Old Testament, right? Pre-Jesus, pre-generation of grace,
Yeah.
pre-salvation, all of these things. See, when Jesus came, he even said, all this time y'all been living like there's Jews and there's Gentiles and there's these people and there's that people. He's like, see, I'm here to say that while those titles may still exist, that doesn't matter anymore. Like,
No.
stop worrying about your genealogy. Stop worrying about your parentage. This no longer applies to you now. What tribe you belong to does not matter anymore. What skin color you are doesn't matter. What language you speak doesn't matter. You are either of God's children or you are not. That is the line in the sand that we are drawing from this point forward. He was very clear.
Obviously, the old laws used to be you would stone a woman for adultery, but let he who is without sin cast the first stone.
Oh, I love when certain Christians, especially New Age types, do throw out some random Old Testament thing. Like,
Yeah.
well, you're not a good Christian. And it's like, all right, that's law of Moses. By that account, you're wearing denim. So you're supposed to be put to death for wearing a cloth made out of more than one fabric. But I guess we're not going to, we're not going to cut those hairs right now. You know,
Is
it's ridiculous.
is anti-gay Old Testament or New Testament?
Both.
It's both.
Really?
Yeah. It's well, okay. Let me say this. Anti-gay is Old Testament. The complete understanding of what a lawful godly marriage is New Testament.
Yeah.
Okay, Old
like
Testament, they called it an abomination of mankind. There's to be like all of these horrible, atrocious things to them. New Testament, they don't mention as far as like how this is like the most disgusting thing ever. They pretty much just say that the marriage is supposed to be one man and one woman.
You know what?
It's very clear
I'm
cut.
sure
They take away any kind of misinterpretation on it.
I'm sure we have a lot of gay Christians out there.
I know a
that,
few
that, they believe that, their sexual nature is okay within God's realm. If you're one of those people, by the way, please reach out to us. We would love to see, exactly where you're deriving all that information from. We're not here to say that one's right or wrong, but we want to understand that understanding.
That's a slippery slope, dog. That's a slippery slope because
it should be spoken from the person's mouth who's living that way. You think?
I know. And I'm not trying to speak on behalf of any of them. I do know quite a few of them, and I love the ones that I do know. Some of them I even consider parts of my family.
Right.
But when you get into it, the ones that acknowledge this, they know what they're doing is wrong, but it's no more, less or more wrong than somebody who's a compulsive liar. Because the Bible is also very clear that a sin is a sin is a sin, and that you either accept the blood of Jesus Christ as salvation or you don't. That doesn't mean that sin stops being sin. You still have to make your choices accordingly. These people are just more or less wearing it on their sleeve rather than doing things in secret like so many others who claim to be one thing that are not.
I would say a lot of sinners wear a lot of their own things on their sleeves, no matter what it be. So to say that sin is a sin, well, that's, where we sin every day of our life, bro.
Correct.
Knowingly sin.
Correct.
And so to say that one's worse than the other, that's kind of ridiculous.
But certain people will take that Old Testament quote and say that it is.
Well, no, but that being said, as far as, getting into that, like there are certain, I've seen this, bro, where certain gay people, they'll say, well, look, this is where it was misinterpreted. What it was really talking about is that a grown man shouldn't lie in bed with a boy, not another grown man, but with a boy. And that's kind of an explanation that I've heard before, which, hey, and they're against pedophiles. I'm okay with the gays, and against the pedophiles, that's how I roll anyway.
No. I get that. And there's the gays against pedophile group GAP that are out there doing the Lord's work in their own way. And hey, blessings be upon them, not throwing shade. But what I am saying is that when you start getting into things that are objectively anti the word, and then you're going to try to make it the word fit the lifestyle rather than the lifestyle fit the word, it's a dangerous and slippery slope. I'm not saying we shouldn't have that conversation. I'm just saying it would have to be done very, very, how could I say this? Carefully.
Okay. Anyway, you're still invited to come on the show to represent yourself. Please.
Oh, everybody's always invited on the show, dog.
Anyway,
sure.
we went off on a weird tangent there, but
yeah.
Anyway, so we only have a couple more minutes, Paul. We definitely got to get you back on because I know you only really scratched the surface as to what you were talking about. But for anybody that's new to learning of you and seeing your work, would you be so kind as to guide the cult members to where you do all of your research at?
Yeah, so you can find me on YouTube. That's my base. I am on Odyssey as well, but that's just a backup channel. I don't interact with that in any way, shape, or form. But go to YouTube, subscribe there. I have many playlists covering many subjects, but there is one called "The Nephilim Look Like Clowns," and it's a 45 episode now, 46. I'm losing track. It goes over a long time. It's about 7 years old, and it just goes through everything, every single details, sub bits, little bits here and there. Go through that. You can work backwards, so you can start from the beginning. Each episode stands alone as a new topic to explore with that goes around the idea that the Nephilim look like clowns. So you can start anywhere, whatever interests you, whatever gets you in there. But it's a journey. So that's where you should go to find all that stuff. I'm writing the book on this subject currently. I'm halfway through it. There's a GoFundMe for that. You can go find that by going to my channel, going to the links below. But YouTube's where you'll find all of my work. And yeah, come and join me. I talk about other things as well, but I am predominantly known for the Nephilim clown stuff. But I do cover many topics, many.
I love it. Yeah. This is awesome information. Thank you so much for doing as much research as you do. There definitely is a place for people like that to go into specific deep dives. I mean, I appreciate
man.
that you cover a lot of other topics,
Oh,
but
you blew my mind today,
going
bro.
as deep as you did with Nephilim and the clowns, bro, like at first seemed like a silly topic. Now I'm just like, okay, yeah, Nephilim are clowns. That makes sense.
I had no idea. I was so ignorant to these connections, but good God, the irrefutable proof is insane.
Crazy stuff, dude. So thank you so much for coming on the show. We definitely got to do it again, and I can't wait to have that conversation.
No problem. Like I said, we've probably covered 25% of this. There's more. There's way more. So
Well,
go check out the channel. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Anyhow, until next time, this was another beautiful episode of the Cult of Conspiracy. And my name's Jonathan.
I'm Jacob.
And there's one very, very important, extremely vital piece of information we need you to learn just as soon as humanly possible. Open up that third eye.
Dope.
Cool, man. That was awesome.
Yeah. All of a sudden, told me she's going to drop off the